The HOA Karen called a tow truck to steal my wife's Jeep from our own driveway, claiming it was abandoned commercial inventory. What she didn't know was that I owned the largest Jeep dealership in the state. 2 days later, her own Jeep got legally repossessed while she screamed in her bathrobe. Before watching full story, comment below from where you watching. Also like and subscribe for more stories. My name is Dave Thompson, and I need to tell you about the most satisfying business revenge I've ever experienced. It involves an HOA Karen who tried to steal my wife's Jeep, not knowing that we own the largest Jeep dealership in the state. By the end of this story, you'll understand why this woman went from driving a brand new Wrangler to walking everywhere after messing with the wrong family. My wife Jessica and I live in Brookside Manor, an upscale neighborhood outside Denver, Colorado. We moved there 5 years ago after my Jeep dealership business really took off. What started as a small used car lot had grown into Thompson Motors, a massive operation with 3 locations and over 200 employees. We were the exclusive Jeep dealer for the entire region, selling everything from basic Wranglers to fully loaded Grand Cherokees. Jessica drives a custom Jeep Wrangler Unlimited that we built specifically for her. It's lifted, has 37-inch tires, custom bumpers, a winch, LED light bars, and every off-road accessory you can imagine. The thing is a beast that can climb mountains, but Jessica also uses it as her daily driver because she loves the way it looks and drives. The problem started when Linda Morrison moved into the biggest house in our neighborhood. She was a divorced woman in her early 50s who had gotten a huge settlement and thought that money made her the queen of the community. Within 6 months of moving in, she had gotten herself elected as HOA president and immediately started making everyone's life miserable. Linda's first complaint was about Jessica's Jeep. She claimed that it was too big, too loud, and didn't fit the aesthetic standards of our upscale neighborhood. She said that lifted trucks and off-road vehicles made the community look like a redneck trailer park, and that we needed to park it in our garage or get rid of it entirely. I tried to explain to Linda that Jessica's Jeep was perfectly legal and that we had every right to park it in our own driveway. Our HOA covenants didn't prohibit any specific types of vehicles, just that they had to be properly registered and maintained. Jessica's Jeep was immaculate and probably worth more than most of the luxury cars in the neighborhood. But Linda wasn't interested in logic or legal requirements. She had decided that Jessica's Jeep was a problem, and she was going to find a way to get rid of it. She started showing up at our house with other HOA board members, taking pictures of the Jeep and making notes about alleged violations. "Mr. Thompson," she announced during one of these visits, "your wife's vehicle is clearly a commercial truck that doesn't belong in a residential neighborhood. We're going to need you to remove it immediately." "It's not a commercial truck," I replied. "It's a personal vehicle that my wife drives every day. And even if it was a commercial truck, our covenants don't prohibit them." Linda's face turned red. "Don't try to lawyer me, Mr. Thompson. I know what I'm looking at, and that thing is an eyesore that's bringing down everyone's property values." Over the next several months, Linda escalated her harassment campaign against Jessica's Jeep. She filed complaints with the county, claiming it was an unregistered commercial vehicle. She called the police multiple times, reporting it as an abandoned vehicle in our driveway. She even contacted our insurance company, trying to get information about the vehicle's registration status. Every complaint was investigated and dismissed because Jessica's Jeep was perfectly legal and properly registered. But each investigation was a hassle that wasted our time and created stress in our lives. Linda was systematically trying to make owning the Jeep so difficult that we would get rid of it just to make her stop. The situation got worse when Linda discovered that I owned a car dealership. Instead of backing down when she realized she was messing with someone in the automotive business, she doubled down on her crazy claims. "Now it all makes sense," she announced at an HOA meeting. "Mr. Thompson is using his residential driveway to store inventory from his dealership. That Jeep isn't his wife's personal vehicle. It's commercial inventory that he's illegally parking in a residential area." This was completely insane. Anyone who looked at Jessica's Jeep could see that it was clearly a personal vehicle. It had her personal license plates, personal insurance, and was full of her personal belongings. But Linda had convinced herself that we were running some kind of illegal business operation out of our driveway. Linda's obsession with Jessica's Jeep was affecting other aspects of our life in the neighborhood. She would follow Jessica when she left the house, trying to document where she was driving and how often she used the vehicle. She started timing how long the Jeep was parked in our driveway, claiming that vehicles couldn't be parked in the same spot for more than 72 hours. The breaking point came when Linda hired a towing company to repossess Jessica's Jeep from our own driveway. On a Tuesday morning, Jessica was getting ready for work when she looked out the window and saw a tow truck backing up to her Jeep with Linda Morrison standing there directing the operation. Jessica ran outside in her pajamas to stop them. "What are you doing?" she shouted at the tow truck driver. "Ma'am, we have authorization from the HOA to remove this abandoned commercial vehicle," the driver replied, showing her a work order signed by Linda Morrison. "This isn't an abandoned vehicle," Jessica said. "This is my personal car parked in my own driveway." Linda stepped forward with a clipboard and a smug expression. "Mrs. Thompson, this vehicle has been illegally parked here for months. The HOA has the authority to remove abandoned and improperly registered vehicles from the community." The tow truck driver looked confused. He had been told he was removing an abandoned commercial truck, but Jessica was clearly the owner of a personal vehicle parked at her own house. He asked Linda to provide proof that the HOA had the legal authority to tow vehicles from private property. Linda couldn't provide any such proof because no HOA has the authority to tow vehicles from private driveways without a court order. But she had convinced the towing company that this was a legitimate repossession by lying about the circumstances. Jessica called me at the dealership and I could hear how upset she was. Some crazy HOA Karen was literally trying to steal her Jeep from our own driveway. I told her to call the police immediately and that I was on my way home. When I arrived, the police were already there sorting out the situation. The tow truck driver had quickly realized that Linda had misrepresented the situation and was refusing to complete the tow. Linda was arguing with the officers, insisting that she had the authority to remove commercial vehicles from the neighborhood. Officer Martinez, who I recognized from previous calls about Linda's harassment, looked tired of dealing with her nonsense. "Ma'am, this is a private driveway, and this is clearly a personal vehicle. You can't just call a tow truck to remove someone else's car because you don't like it." Linda wasn't backing down. "Officer, that man owns a car dealership, and he's illegally using his driveway to store inventory. This is a zoning violation, and the HOA has the right to enforce community standards." That's when I decided that Linda Morrison had gone too far. Trying to steal my wife's vehicle was crossing a line that I wasn't going to tolerate. Linda had no idea who she was messing with or what resources I had at my disposal. After the police left and the tow truck drove away, I called my business attorney and explained the situation. He told me that Linda's attempt to have Jessica's vehicle towed could be considered attempted theft and that we could pursue both criminal charges and civil litigation. But I had a better idea for dealing with Linda Morrison. Instead of just fighting her in court, I was going to use my business connections to teach her a lesson she would never forget. The first thing I did was contact every dealership, auto parts store and service center in the Denver area. I sent out a message explaining Linda Morrison's harassment campaign against my family and asking them to be aware of her tactics. Within 48 hours, Linda Morrison was effectively blacklisted from every automotive business in the region. Then I discovered something very interesting about Linda's own vehicle. She drove a brand new Jeep Wrangler Unlimited that she had purchased from my main competitor across town. I called the finance manager at that dealership, who I knew personally, and asked about Linda's loan status. It turned out that Linda was behind on her payments and was technically in default on her loan. The dealership had been trying to work with her to avoid repossession, but she had been ignoring their calls and letters. My competitor was actually relieved to hear from me because they had been looking for Linda's vehicle for weeks. "Dave," the finance manager told me, "if you can help us locate that Wrangler, we'd be grateful. She owes us over $60,000 and we've been trying to repossess it for 2 months." I explained exactly where Linda lived and what her daily routine was. I also mentioned that she had recently tried to have my wife's Jeep illegally towed and that she had been harassing military families in our neighborhood. The finance manager was very interested in this information. 2 days later, Linda Morrison discovered what it actually feels like to have your vehicle repossessed. She came out of her house Friday morning to find a legitimate tow truck hooking up her Jeep Wrangler. Unlike her attempted theft of Jessica's vehicle, this was a completely legal repossession by the actual lien holder. Linda ran out screaming and yelling, demanding that the tow truck driver stop. But the driver had all the proper paperwork and the legal authority to repossess the vehicle. Linda's Jeep was loaded onto the truck and driven away while she stood in her driveway in her bathrobe, screaming about her rights. The irony was perfect. Linda had tried to have Jessica's Jeep illegally towed from our driveway, and now her own Jeep was being legally repossessed from her driveway. The woman who had spent months claiming that other people's vehicles didn't belong in the neighborhood was now the one losing her vehicle. But I wasn't done with Linda Morrison yet. Over the next several weeks, I used my business connections to make her automotive life as difficult as possible. When she tried to buy a replacement vehicle, she discovered that no dealership in the area was willing to work with her. When she tried to get her repossessed Jeep serviced before the auction, she found that no service center would take her business. Linda was forced to take public transportation and ride-sharing services to get around. For a woman who had been so concerned about the image of the neighborhood, walking to the bus stop every morning was a humbling experience. The story of Linda's attempted vehicle theft and subsequent repossession spread quickly through the neighborhood. Other residents were amazed that the HOA president had tried to steal a neighbor's car and then lost her own vehicle to legitimate repossession. Her credibility as a community leader was completely destroyed. An emergency HOA meeting was called to address Linda's conduct. Residents were furious that their HOA president had attempted to commit theft and had brought negative attention to the community. Several board members who had previously supported Linda's aggressive tactics began distancing themselves from her. During the meeting, I stood up and addressed the room. "Ladies and gentlemen, Linda Morrison attempted to have my wife's legally owned and properly registered vehicle stolen from our private driveway. This wasn't a mistake or a misunderstanding, it was attempted theft motivated by personal animosity." I presented evidence of Linda's harassment campaign, including photos, witness statements, and documentation of her false complaints to various agencies. I also revealed that Linda's own vehicle had been repossessed due to her failure to make payments, which raised questions about her financial responsibility and judgment. The vote to remove Linda as HOA president was unanimous. The board also voted to formally apologize to my family and to implement new procedures to prevent future abuse of authority by HOA officials. But Linda's problems were just beginning. The attempted theft of Jessica's vehicle had created legal liabilities for both Linda personally and the HOA as an organization. Our attorney filed a civil lawsuit seeking damages for harassment, attempted theft, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. The HOA's insurance company investigated the incident and determined that Linda's actions were outside the scope of her authority and were not covered by the community's liability policy. This meant that Linda could be held personally responsible for any damages awarded in the lawsuit. Faced with mounting legal costs and the prospect of significant financial liability, Linda put her house up for sale and moved away from the neighborhood. The new HOA leadership reached out to establish a better relationship with all residents and to ensure that future conflicts would be handled through proper legal channels. The incident actually ended up being great publicity for my dealership business. The story of how we dealt with an HOA bully spread through the local automotive community, and several customers mentioned it when they came in to buy vehicles. People appreciated that we had stood up to harassment and had used our business connections to fight back against abuse. Jessica's Jeep is still parked in our driveway, looking exactly the same as it did before Linda Morrison's harassment campaign. The difference is that now our neighbors appreciate it as a symbol of standing up to bullies and defending property rights. The new HOA president drives a Jeep Compass that she bought from my dealership. She always waves when she sees Jessica's Wrangler and has mentioned several times how impressive it looks. It's amazing how much difference reasonable leadership can make in a community. As for Linda Morrison, I heard she moved to Florida and bought a small economy car that she paid cash for. She learned the hard way that when you try to steal someone's vehicle, you might end up losing your own. She also learned that messing with people in the automotive business can have serious consequences for your ability to buy, sell, or service vehicles in the future. The incident taught me an important lesson about using business resources to fight personal battles. Sometimes the best way to deal with a bully is to use your professional connections and expertise to level the playing field. Linda Morrison thought she could intimidate a regular homeowner, but she picked a fight with someone who had the tools and knowledge to fight back effectively. Today our neighborhood is peaceful and well managed under honest leadership. Jessica still drives her amazing Jeep every day, and other residents have started asking me for advice about off-road modifications for their own vehicles. Sometimes the best revenge isn't getting even. It's turning your enemy's attack into an opportunity to strengthen your community and your business. Linda Morrison learned that when you try to repossess someone else's vehicle, you might discover what it's really like to have your own vehicle repossessed. And when you mess with a family that owns the largest Jeep dealership in the state, you might find yourself walking to the bus stop while your neighbors drive off in their awesome Jeeps.